Welcome to our Think Big Series 2021, brought to you by PSG. It's great to once again be part of the series, and for that one person out there that now do not know who I am, I'm Ronald King, and I head up Public Policy and Regulatory Affairs at PSG Konsult. Now, PSG is a leading independent financial services group with an extensive national footprint in South Africa, as well as a presence in Namibia. We've been in operation since 1998 and pride ourselves on providing a bigger picture approach to our clients' financial needs, from asset and wealth management to short-term insurance. We offer clients access to a wide range of insurance and investment products and pride ourselves on providing comprehensive and tailor-made advice. Our clients benefit from access to proprietary products and solutions, as well as a comprehensive list of selected third-party products. Now, this Think Big series is a collection of dialogues with leading speakers hosted by our award-winning financial journalist, Bruce Whitfield, who has no introduction needed. We aim to bring our audiences independent insights that help them formulate their own opinions on some of our country's most pressing issues. During this pandemic, uncertainty and challenges continue to abound, but we believe, armed with quality insights, we are better equipped to chart the way ahead. Of course, there's never a dull moment in South African politics, and backed by popular demand, Moeletsi Mbeki speaks to Bruce and updates us on South Africa's most pressing challenges and new developments since his previous session with us. Moeletsi is a highly regarded international political analyst, author, and entrepreneur, a director of many companies, and has recently co-authored a manifesto for social change, How to Save South Africa, together with his niece, Dr. Nubantu Mbeki. He is deputy chairman of the South African Institute for International Affairs, an independent think tank based at the University of the Witwatersrand. He's also a member of the Council for the International Institute for Strategic Studies, which is based in London. Now, our social media hashtag for this series is hashtag ThinkBigPSG. This series is free, shareable, and open to anyone interested, whether you are a PSG client or not. With that, I would like to hand you over to Bruce.
Ronald, thank you very much indeed. Moeletsi Mbeki, welcome back. We've seen the collapse of a tyrant, collapse of a populist head of state. Donald Trump is out of the White House. What does this mean for the future, I wonder?
Well, I am certainly one of the, I'm sure, millions, if not billions of people in the world who are so happy to see the back of Donald Trump. To think that a nutcase like him had his finger on the nuclear button really was something that certainly got me very worried. And I think it got many people, especially Americans, got them worried. So fortunately, the Americans have a working democracy, and the Democratic Party won the election and got rid of the Republican president and the dominance of his party, which, to my great shock, had been supporting this madman all these years. Quite incredible to believe, but there you are.
Who are we as South Africans to cast stones? South Africa's got a dominant political party that supported a despot, as we're now hearing through the Zondo Commission, that the State Security Agency was paying Jacob Zuma 4.5 million rand a month. 9 billion rand went missing out of the coffers. The ANC supported Jacob Zuma to the very, very bitter end, until even it couldn't do so anymore. We can't really criticize America, can we?
You know, the Americans are many steps ahead of us, but of the Republican Party. The Republican Party lost control of the Senate. It lost control of the House of Representatives. It lost control of the presidency. The ANC is still in control. So there's a huge difference there. So in a way, the lesson I think we have to learn from the American experience is that we also need a big party. We need a real multi-party democracy where we have two or three big parties whereby the voter has a choice and can get rid of the other party. So our democracy is still very much at its infancy, which is why we have single party dominance. That's how I would say.
27 years into our democracy, and we don't have a single solid, credible, popular opposition. We've got a populist opposition, and we've got a quite strong opposition, but nothing forceful that really poses any serious threat to single party dominance by the ANC.
I agree there completely. And at the end of the day, the problem lies with the two main opposition parties, which is the official opposition, the Democratic Alliance, DA, and of course the Economic Freedom Fighters. Between them, they can't mobilize, they don't have a message for the voter that the voter can say, you know what, I will vote for these guys and I have confidence they will run the country better than the ANC. They haven't got that message. The DA hasn't got that message, and the EFF hasn't got that message. So the voter feels stuck with the ANC. But the ANC is getting cleverer, I must say, in the sense that they have zeroed in on who benefits the most from ANC rule, and why do they benefit from the ANC rule. And that's making it even more difficult for the opposition party, because the ANC has zeroed in on the poor African population. That's who votes for the ANC. I was talking a few weeks ago to one of the opinion poll companies, and they pointed out that almost 60% of the people who vote for the ANC are the poor people in the rural areas. And the reason they vote for the ANC is because the ANC says to them, if you vote for anyone else, they will cut the social grants that we give you. So you vote for us, and we will keep dishing out the social grants. And the ANC, and I'm saying it's getting even more clever with this, is using the COVID-19 to increase social grants. If you remember, they pulled something out of the hat of another social grant of 350 rands to people who were not already on the social grants, which cost a few billions. But so that is expanding the number of people who are dependent on social grants, which in reality is to buy more voters from the poor. So yeah.
But if you're a political one-trick pony, and if all you have got is a finite resource, which is money, and you keep throwing money at the voter problem, eventually you run out of luck, time, or money, and possibly all three at the same time.
Well, that is what is happening to South Africa, which is why we are amassing this debt mountain. The debt of South Africa is now put at somewhere above 80% of gross domestic product, and is expected to reach 95% in a year or two. So it's very problematic, which means that sooner or later you only will, the government, the revenues will only pay for debt service, for servicing the debt, and maybe paying some of the social grants. So the ANC is fully aware of this, which is why they're already cutting the salaries of the civil service. and so far they've gotten away with it. They had a 3-year agreement with the civil service, and then they need the poor more than they need the civil servants because the poor are many and the civil servants are few. So when the ANC has to make a choice, who do I please? The millions of the poor who vote for me, or the 1.2 million civil servants? Uh, so that's the choice they have. They have made what actually is a good choice for the ANC, which is they cut the pay of the 1.2 million. The poor in South Africa, poor people, are somewhere in the region of 25, 26 million people, somewhere there. And these are voters. So that's the choice that they make. But eventually, of course, it leads to what is called the fiscal cliff. And the rating agencies have been warning the ANC government about this, and eventually they just junked us and thought these guys are not listening. But what they don't understand is that the ANC can't listen to them, because if it listened to the rating agents, it would lose the vote of the poor, because then it wouldn't be giving them these huge largesse that it is giving them today.
The answer
So
to many of the problems is growth. You get growth, you get expansion, you get jobs, you reduce pressure on the fiscus, you raise additional tax revenues, and eventually you dig yourself out of the fiscal hole. The ANC, however, seems allergic to the medicine required to get the growth. And surely that's the self-defeating road that they're on.
well, it is self-defeating, but in terms of the ANC's own agenda, you see, you have to put yourself in the shoes of the ANC. In the ANC, in the shoes of the ANC feels like for the past 100 years or 100 whatever time they have been deprived. So now is their time to eat. Now, you can't both invest and eat, because to invest and grow the economy, you have to save. So they decided, no, we will postpone to the next generation. For our generation in the hand now, it's our time to eat. So they're eating, and they have to keep the voters eating also their voters in order that they stay in power. And so there's no money left for financing investment in the South African economy. We're one of the highest taxed country in the world, and therefore we're one of the countries. If you look at the top 42 countries that the Economist magazine reports on, we are one of those. There are 2 African countries, they're Egypt and South Africa. We are one of the countries with the highest unemployment and the lowest investment as a percentage of gross domestic product. So you can't both eat and grow the economy. You have to make a choice, and that's the choice that the ANC has made, and that's where it's leading.
You talk about the ANC as if it is this sort of single identity party. It is a party that is doing this strategically and deliberately. Now, we know parties have got no life and soul of their own. They're made up of individuals and people. Is there a great big, shared conspiracy within the ANC to carry out this bright master plan, or is it simply a political party actually that hasn't got the first idea of actually what it's doing?
No, it's more really an outcome of history rather than a plot or a conspiracy or some evil genius who is trying to pull down the country. Remember, the ANC is a party of black liberation. And the black population in South Africa generally feels it has been exploited, and secondly, that it had to tighten the belt in order to build the infrastructure that South Africa has today. Now that it has political power, it has to benefit from the existing infrastructure. So it's not a theory, it's just human nature in a way that says, well, we have been hungry for a long time. Now we are sitting at the eating table, so I'll have 3 helpings, while white Bruce Whitfield has 1 helping.
I mean,
So
anybody who's ever sat at the dining table and has had 3 helpings know if you do it often enough and you ignore the advice of the dietitian, you're going to develop diabetes, possibly you're going to have a heart attack or a stroke. It kills you because it's not a sustainable or healthy way to live. How do we dispense the medicine required to break the bad habits that have been created over 108, 109 years?
Well, Bruce, I wish I had the answer to your question. The reality is that I don't. It's partly to do with generation, of course. What is happening in South Africa is that you are getting a younger black generation who don't feel that they have been deprived. And what you are going to happen, it will take time, but what is going to happen is that this younger, better educated, more professional, young black generation are saying, no, this is not the way we have to build the country. Anyway, I wasn't deprived. My parents sent me to University of Cape Town to study, or University of Stellenbosch. I'm as good as an American or a Chinese. I don't need to have 3 helpings. Actually, I need to have half a helping because that's what keeps me healthy and gives me. So that is a sort of a generational change that I think will also, and is starting to happen in South Africa already, this the change of mindset away from the mindset of grievance, the mindset of deprivation, to increasingly a mindset of building, that we must build the country to be as good as other countries.
And where do those people find a political home? Because whether you like politics or despise politics, unfortunately, this is all about politics. You need a political home, a political identity, something to coalesce around. And right now, this generation has nothing to glue them together.
Well, yes, I think some of them are in the ANC, are unhappy there, but they are there. Some of them are in the DA, and the DA interestingly grew quite a lot up to the local government election. It went up to 24% of the vote. Then Helen Zille came back and upset that whole growth trajectory. So some of them are still in the DA, and that's one of the striking things about the DA, which you notice. It has quite a number of very outspoken young black professionals in the DA, which is making the old guard in the DA, like Helen Zille, very uncomfortable. So in a way, it reinforces what I'm saying, is that they are saying, look, there's the old guard in the ANC, there's also the old guard in the DA as well. And so these young people are making these 2 old guards very unhappy, but it's a good thing for South Africa.
So where do young South Africans go? If they don't have a comfortable home within the ANC or within the Democratic Alliance or within the EFF, which doesn't represent the aspirations of positivity, of growth, of investment, it's very bling, brash and showing off, where are they going to go? Where are they going to find this new political identity?
Well, they have to create their own political identity. You see, in the real world, every generation has its own problems. So that generation has to solve those problems. So the young generation that we are seeing today, for example, we saw a glimpse of it in the hashtag fees must fall. Uh, this is the new professional young generation that is emerging in South Africa. It's no longer logged into race issues, into the history of the past of South Africa, of racial deprivation. It's more forward looking. It's more the EFF, ironically, although it's a party of relatively young people, is still locked in its parents, let me say, mindset of we have to eat. So they are locked, it takes the form of bling, but it's the same thing as what the ANC is doing. And the ANC has its bling like the Blue Light Brigade and all that. Those are, it's the older people idea of playing is the Blue Light Brigade and buying very expensive houses in Bryanston, you know, and all those things, and going on yachts in the Mediterranean. So that's what the old guys are doing.
You see the emergence of Herman Mashaba, who wants to be a political force. Musi Maimane has decided not to launch a political party, but almost like a support group for independence into the future, because he says the political party system, and I agree with him on this point, is failing ordinary South Africans, but I'm not sure he's got the right recipe either. Are there any sort of green shoots of cohesive politics, or is it a future of populist causes like fees must fall?
Well, fees must fall wasn't really a populist cause. It was a genuine cause of young people at university, uh, where the government is faced with how to finance this consumption binge and at the same time finance the universities, because universities are very important. We have world-class universities in South Africa, but world-class universities require world-class libraries, require world-class laboratories. And with the consumption strategy of the ANC government, then the issue of the endowment of universities is becoming problematic. So the universities are slipping in the global league of universities. So the students were right to demand that the universities must be financed properly, and the students were there must be funded properly.
We're painting a really bleak picture of the future. Or are we really? I mean, is this just the natural cycle of things? After 325 years of oppression by minorities in South Africa of a majority, you get political liberation, and it's very, very messy. But this has been messy for a very long period of time, and feels, rather than rehabilitating itself, it's just getting messier and messier and messier. Is that necessary as part of a rejuvenation process?
Well, you're absolutely right that this is part of a cycle in a way. Let's call it a cycle, in the sense that after our 300 years, we've entered another cycle, which in a way is a transition cycle. The cycle that we're in now is a transition, in the sense that we still have single party dominance. Now, this is dying. The ANC is declining. At one stage, the ANC was at 70% of the electorate. At the last local government election, it lost control of the biggest metros in the country, which was Johannesburg, Tshwane, Nelson Mandela Bay, Ekurhuleni, and Cape Town. So it lost all those. So the cycle is actually changing. And the ANC realizes that the cycle is changing. But it's like all habits, you're locked into a habit. It's very difficult to get out of the habit and change and see a different and enter. But South Africa really, in my view, I'm optimistic about South Africa in the sense that the people have seen that the ANC is not solving their problems. So they stop the ones in the urban areas who do not have the cushion of agriculture, of land. They have already abandoned the ANC. Otherwise, the ANC wouldn't have lost its majority in the metros of Gauteng, the Western Cape, and part of the Eastern Cape. So there is change. There is absolute change that is coming. So we are entering a new cycle where, for example, the black working class, the heart of the black working class is in Nelson Mandela Bay and in Gauteng. And the ANC lost majorities in both places. So it's very clear to the population that the ANC is the past, it's not the future of South Africa.
We've seen Julius Malema recommend a postponement of local government elections, which is bizarre for a politician who wants us to believe that he's on the up and up, but he's hiding behind COVID and suggesting that in the interests of public health, we don't have local government elections scheduled for probably April this year. What is your view on the importance of having those local government elections and really testing the temperature of the electorate?
Well, everybody else in the world is having their elections. We've just seen the United States have an election. We've just seen Ghana have an election. We've seen Uganda having an election. We had the UK having an election. So where Julius Malema gets it from that COVID-19 stops elections being held, if you take the necessary precautions of distancing and what have you, there's no reason why you shouldn't have the election. I suspect Julius Malema must have been doing some opinion polling amongst people who traditionally vote for him. And the ANC is taking them away from him through the food parcels and the social welfare ramping up that has been happening as a result of COVID-19. So he now wants to have that process to get out of the system. So he probably will lose votes, at least according to his calculation, if an election was held this year.
How significant is the vaccine fiasco going to be in the minds of an electorate going to local government elections?
Personally, I think it's very significant because, we normally have vaccines in South Africa. Infants have vaccines and whatever. What this is showing the population is the incredible level of incompetence that the ANC government has sunk into. I mean, we know that the ANC has been in trouble for a while managing its own internal affairs. Now we are seeing that lives of literally thousands of people are being put at risk due to this income, which could have been saved. You see, so now it doesn't matter what your color is, it doesn't matter what your wealth is, it doesn't matter where you live. The bungling over the acquisition of vaccines affects every South African. So it is, I think it will certainly impact on the vote for the ANC in the coming local government. But as I have said, certainly the urban population has started abandoning the ANC anyway.
And it creates political opportunity as well, because Alan Windley has said that the Western Cape will go out and search for its own vaccine. If central government wants to be in charge and wants to procure centrally and wants to wait for COVAX and isn't going to make the phone calls necessary, Alan Windley says he's prepared to do so. Now, that's potentially smart politics. Is it in the best interests of the country? One might argue it is.
Yes, but he has it's his competence. The health sector and education is a provincial competence. So I'm surprised it's taken them so long to go and get the vaccine, because it's in their competence. They run the hospitals. Hospitals are run by provincial governments. Clinics are run by provincial governments. So it's their responsibility to make sure hospitals are supplied, clinics are supplied, and vaccines are provided, and all those kinds of requirements are provided. Anyway, they have eventually woken up and plucked some courage, and they should do it. And so should other provinces, even if they are ANC provinces. We saw this in the United States. The states governments decided to ignore Donald Trump, and some of the state governments were Republican, controlled by the Republicans. So it doesn't mean that the Western Cape government is the only one that can do it. The others can do it also, if they want to.
It's private sector procurement. What if Netcare went and sourced its own vaccines, Mediclinic went and sourced its own vaccines, whether Discovery or any other one of the big medical insurance companies decided, actually, we need to protect our nurses and doctors at Netcare, or Discovery says, we need to protect the 2 million people that are signed up to our medical scheme. It is in our commercial best interest to do so, because we're paying out a fortune in life insurance claims and in hospital fees. We've got a commercial imperative to do this. I'm wondering whether or not it's time to declare UDI on vaccines.
Oh, absolutely. I think they should do it myself. If my company could afford it, definitely we would do it. Because, the lives of the people we have, South Africa, for starters, is short of skilled people. So we can't be playing games with the life expectancy of our skilled people just because Mr. Mkhize or Dr. Mkhize doesn't feel like picking up a phone. You saw the story the other day of Business Day, where Peter Bruce, their journalist, picked up a phone and phoned a pharmaceutical company and said, "Can I buy vaccines from you?" And the company said, "Sure, we will deliver in 3-4 months' time." So the vaccines are there. The ANC, for whatever reasons, excuses it has, it's not doing it. We have people like the miners, for example, who live in very confined spaces underground, and they have to be vaccinated. Whatever political games the ANC may or may not be playing. So if I were a mine owner, I would go and buy vaccine and vaccinate everybody who has to go underground into that mine.
You talk about games that the ANC is playing. Is it a game, or is it just sheer ineptitude?
Well, I think it's a bit of both. Because we saw something similar over the HIV/AIDS situation. The ANC also played a game with the health of the public during that time. So this is becoming second nature to the ANC when the country is faced with a major health hazard. the ANC plays games. So that's why I'm saying
it drags out the crisis. It deepens the crisis. It pushes South Africa to the very edge and possibly over the fiscal cliff. It is in not even the ANC's interests to be.
I would have thought, yeah, I would have thought not. I would have thought it's not in the ANC's interest. But you have to talk to the ANC leadership as to how do they see the situation. Maybe they have an angle that you and me cannot see, which they do see. So you will have to talk to them to try and find out what is it that they see that nobody else can see about procuring vaccines. I would have thought South Africa, since we have the largest infection in Africa, we would have been on the front line and we even have trials. There were trials of these vaccines carried out in South Africa. Surely, if I were the ANC government, I would have said, okay, you want to do trials here? Fine. The condition is that I get 10 million vaccines if your vaccine works. I'll pay for it. I would start by saying I get them for free, and then I negotiate and say I'll pay for them. But that's what they should have negotiated. They didn't.
I mean, the army went and got some treatments from Cuba and then left the fridges open, for goodness sake. I mean, we perhaps are putting far too much emphasis on the ability of government to do its job. Questions from our viewers, from our participants today, who have joined us from all over the country. And my favorite question is very short and sweet, 3 words with a question mark. Is there hope?
Is there hope for?
Is there hope?
Is there hope for South Africa or the people of South Africa?
I'm assuming for South Africa, for the people of South Africa, for the future. It's an open-ended question. I think you can choose which way you answer it.
Oh, okay. Well, personally, I think there is a lot of hope for South Africa. South Africa has a lot of very talented people. We have a son in America who has invented an electric car. He's one of the graduates of a South African high school. He's now one of he is the richest man, I read somewhere. He's the richest man in the world. So, I mean, you have to be a real pessimist to see that there is this young South African who could do this when he's given an opportunity, and you think there is no future for South Africa. There's a huge future for South Africa. We have to overcome the obstacles, but the obstacles are actually getting smaller. I mean, when I compare the Cyril Ramaphosa to Dr. Verwoerd, I mean, Dr. Verwoerd was a real enemy. I mean, he arrested my father and kept him in prison for 25 years. Cyril, if he wanted to arrest me, frankly, I would laugh all the way to the bar, because he can't kill a fly. So our obstacles are getting smaller and smaller. They are not getting bigger and bigger. We overcame the tough obstacles like real dictators like Dr. Verwoerd, D.F. Malahan, Foster, P.W. Botha. I mean, these guys had nuclear weapons, remember?
No, but you've sent goosebumps going up my spine, and so often we do forget from whence we have come, because it's convenient to do so, or we want to look forward, and we forget what has been overcome in South Africa, the dictatorial past, and it was a dictatorial past, and it was a devastating past, and it caused enormous damage, and it is the primary cause of so many of the problems that we have to this day. But for many people who are losing faith in the future, somebody like Elon Musk, who has got about as much interest in South Africa as a person living in Alaska. I mean, he's really I don't know if carries a flame for South Africa at all. He left South Africa. He had a miserable childhood. His family life was awful. His school life was awful, and he left. And he's gone and taken his skills elsewhere. And tragically, we have seen millions of South Africans over the last 100 years do the same. And that's the skills crisis that South Africa faces. South Africans need an incentive to stay. South Africans need an incentive to invest. South Africans need to believe. Is there that reason to believe, do you think?
Yes, I think, yes, I agree with you that there are people who get discouraged and think, I'm out of here. There is no hope. There is no future for my children. And that's a choice that every parent sooner or later is faced with. I mean, my parents were faced with similar things, and we ended up in exile for nearly 30 years. We lost members of our family in the struggle, but we're here. And even one of us became a president. So, it can happen. And I think South Africans have to realize that the people of South Africa have a lot of ingenuity, they have a lot of strength. They, as I say, they have faced much tougher obstacles and they have overcome them. And I have absolutely no doubt that we will overcome. The ANC is actually a soft obstacle. It's not a tough obstacle that the National Party was.
In that environment, in that context, I mean, one looks at a very, very influential, globally competitive corporate sector in South Africa, a big proportion of which has stepped up to the plate to work with government. I don't want to say collaborate, but I think certainly to strong arm government in some respects, to try to push government towards more of a growth agenda. Is it working?
Well, it's hard to say. Personally, I don't think so. I think the government is sitting down with them and saying, we will listen. But when push comes to shove, it doesn't really implement what the growth model, the growth trajectory that business wants to see for South Africa. I mean, in a way, I find it very ironic that the Liberation Party, which should be the party of growth and equality and happiness, it is business that is actually promoting growth and equality. So it's completely different in South Africa. It's quite a bizarre situation that business is promoting more equality than a liberation party.
Although in the first 15 years of democracy, under Nelson Mandela and under your brother, up until 2008 and Polokwane, South Africa had a great growth trajectory. ANC economic policy, considerably more successful than the nationalist economic policy. South Africa, included in the global economy, saw rapid growth rates, 5% growth rates. We were achieving those growth rates. We were creating jobs. It is possible. The ANC has shown that it was capable of doing the right thing and broadening the base of wealth and the ability to create more of a welfare state. But that has gone horribly wrong. Is it possible, do you think, to go back to, as somebody puts it, can the ANC go back to its values? And I don't know if the Mbeki, Manuel, Mboweni era was ANC values or whether there was just sensible free market operations in a global economy. I'm not too sure. Help.
Well, the issue of what happened then after 94, let's say in the 10 years after 94, from 94 to 2008. I think that's the period that you're looking at. It's a very fascinating story, and I'm reluctant to say it can be repeated or it can't be repeated, because there were so many factors at play there. First, the lifting of the sanctions. That was one of the factors that was at play. Secondly, the growth of China, the demand for our minerals by China. That was one of the factors that was at play. There was the so-called commodity boom that happened. Then our being appointed by FIFA to run the 2010 World Cup, and then we had to have a big build program for stadiums, for highways, for railways, and all that. So there were lots of factors that were entered into that picture. And then the internal conflicts of the ANC also started at that time, leading up to Polokwane, the removal of the president in 2008, and so on. So you have to see both sides of the equation.
I put it to you, at the risk of sounding like Advocate Barry Rue, but I put it to you that we're in a commodity boom at the moment, which puts the commodity boom post 1994 into the shade. There is still huge demand for commodities out of China. Prices in dollar terms are considerably higher than they've been ever before. And South Africa is producing commodities, exporting commodities. Where we are failing is our domestic economy. 1994, 32 of the top 40 companies on the JSE were mining companies, and a large proportion of them were gold mining companies. Since then, we've turned into a first world services economy, and the top 40 of the JSE hardly has a mining company on it, and most of those mining companies are mining elsewhere. We failed domestically subsequent to 2008 and the global financial crisis. We've spent more money than we've earned, and we've forgotten how to earn it. Maybe that's what we need to learn.
And also, we've stopped generating electricity. You see, if you don't generate electricity, you can't be a mining economy, because you can't smelt the minerals that you produce. I was looking at steel production in South Africa the other day. In 1980, South Africa produced more steel than India. In 1980, it was about 9 million tons of steel. Today, South Africa produces about 5 million tons of steel, if you're lucky. India produces 110 million tons of steel. So there's something very wrong that has gone wrong with South Africa over a long period of time. Remember, the ANC government finally gave approval to ArcelorMittal to take over ISCO, and they have totally trashed ISCO. And now we are seeing the problems. So that's why I was saying that I'm nervous about us comparing 94 to 2008 and seeing this wonderful and not seeing processes that actually started during that time that are still working themselves out. Like, for example, lack of investment in electricity.
Absolutely.
We knew in 2002, 2003 that we were going to run out of electricity, but the then government did not invest in new power stations.
And 20 years later, we're still enduring power cuts on a regular basis. And
absolutely,
and again, that undermines the very confidence that exists within South Africa. I mean, again, this ultimately is a slow burn to change, but by the time the change comes, the fixing job is going to be so much bigger. And it befuddles me as to why a political party that is so determined to be in power forever doesn't get that it is on a slow and faster burning platform than ever before.
You know what? One of the people I never quite met him when I was in Zimbabwe, but he had a vision of being in power for 1,000 years. His name was Ian Smith in Rhodesia. Well, you know, the ANC says it will be in power until the second coming of Jesus Christ. And as you are pointing out, it's not going to happen because their policies are destroying the economy. I mean, today, South Africa is exporting chrome ore. Right now, all these years we have been beneficiating chrome ore in South Africa, producing ferrochrome and selling to the world market. Today, the world's leader of ferrochrome supply to the world market is China. And China takes chrome ore from South Africa, ships it all the way to China, beneficiates it in China, which is really mainly adding electricity to it, sells it on the world market cheaper than South Africa can do because of the problems of generating electricity in South Africa, and that's the government's creation. So yes, there are serious problems which are self-made by the South African government and by ourselves. But can they be solved? Of course, they can be solved.
But they're not going to be. Are they going to be solved politically, or are they going to be solved commercially?
Well, some of them have to be solved politically. You see, that is, there are some which can be solved commercially. I mean, the vaccines, at the end of the day, we can get a lot of people vaccinated through the commercial routes, whatever the failure of South African government. But there are many other things which we can't do commercially because they require, for example, treaties. We are members of the World Trade Organization. That has to be done politically. You can't do a treaty commercially. It has to be done politically. So those are the challenges that we face. But I think the good thing that is happening is that the things that can be solved commercially, the commercial people are now realizing they have to solve them. They may not be able to solve the political ones, but the ones that they can solve, they are now saying, let's try and solve them. For example, the question of businesses generating power for themselves. With the failure of Eskom, they are saying, no, we're going to generate our own electricity ourselves and not wait for Eskom to be sorted out. Now, that's a good solution. It keeps our industry functioning instead of the hit and miss solution of the state-owned enterprises. The other one.
My neighbor just over there is putting photovoltaics on his road. I'm going to go buy an extension cable and plug it into his feed, frankly, because I'm too cheap to do my own. But Moeletsi Mbeki, thank you very, very much. Thought-provoking as always, nice and edgy as always. Ronald King, back to you.
But I think what I've heard today is a clear fact that this local election is going to be extremely interesting this year to give us a feeling of what is really happening in South Africa. And I've also heard that the future is in our youth, and that they are starting to voice their concerns. They are starting to provide solutions as well. So there are more Elon Musks in South Africa. And the last thing, and I think one of the most important things that we also need to remember from what I heard today is we have overcome much more tougher obstacles than those that we have today. So Moeletsi, Bruce, thank you very, very much. I think a very inspiring message, very interesting one, and we will be following politics this year with the local election. and with a keen eye to see how the COVID vaccine failure will play out in that area as well. I would, of course, be remiss if I do not tell our listeners that a skilled and trusted financial advisor can be very invaluable during these uncertain times. They can provide you objective insights and help you consider alternative scenarios so you can make considered, rational decisions on your wealth and your insurance portfolios. So if you have an advisor, I encourage you to engage with them at this stage. And if you don't, then please get in touch with us. We at PSG welcome your feedback, so please communicate with us and be sure to register for our next exciting speaker in the Think Big series. Thank you and goodbye.